Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Glad you could join me. Glad you all could make it once again. As usual, I forgot to put this in the chat, so I'll go ahead and put my pinned message in the chat. As usual, I will be beginning with, I can't talk and type at the same time. Let me see. I'll be answering pre-submitted questions for the first part of the stream. So if you have a question for me in the chat, please hang on to it until I get done answering those. That's a little underwhelming for a finish, isn't it? But, whatever. Thanks. Bring it back up a little bit. And then pin it, and there we go. See, this is you get to see the magic of the show happen right before your eyes. Anyway, glad everybody could make it. As you just heard me say, I'll be turning to questions submitted ahead of time by patrons and channel members. No, Radical Bacon, I'm a really fast typist, but I was composing. If I'm just like taking like a Mavis Beacon typing test, I can fly. I can get like over 90 words a minute. I'm like I am capable of being a super fast typer. But not just then. I wasn't that slow. I mean, I was keeping a pretty steady pace. Like, God, oh my God, cut me some slack. Anyway, I'm going to turn now from yes, thank you, Dana. It's the multitasking. I wouldn't say I suck at it. I'm just not as proficient at it as just typing out something that's already been written. That's all. I wouldn't say I suck at it, Dana. It's a little harsh. Unduly harsh, I think. Anyway, I'm answering questions that were submitted early by patrons and channel members first. So I'll get through those, and then I will turn back to the live chat for the rest of the stream. So yes, if you do have a question that you want me to answer or something you want me to talk about in the live chat, hold on to it until I am through the patron and member questions, because I'll probably miss it otherwise. And also, most especially, if you were planning on being generous with a super chat tonight, which I always welcome and encourage. But if you're planning on throwing me some cash with a super chat, and you have something you want me to hear, or a question you want me to answer or something with your super chat, if possible, if you're going to be able to stick around for the entire stream, please hold on to it until I can pay attention to the live chat. Otherwise, I might miss it, and I would hate to miss your super chat and not be able to acknowledge it. And thank you for your generosity. So anyway, let's now turn to the pre-submitted questions. And the first one of those is from, there it is, Keith Hale. And Keith says, regarding your Batman needn't be a billionaire video, the wealth inequality problem with superheroism and supervillainism leads to a rare disagreement. This vid helps me ask about Soups's OP, which I believe means overpowering. Imagine a Shives video titled Clark Kent doesn't need to be faster than the Flash, more deadly than Thanos, more handsome than Snuffy, more golly shucks humble than Homelander, better at engineering than Iron Man, and more pure in his lineage than the Virgin Mary already. The Man of Steel being downgraded to God of Unobtainium could leap tall before being downgraded. The God of Unobtainium could leap tall buildings in a single bound, not fly so fast as to reverse the Big Bang. Bullets bounced off his chest, not tactical nukes. How is this criminally overpowered Kal-El not Bezos's moral inferior? I mean, he clearly has the cures for COVID and cancer in his nostril hairs. Faster than a speeding locomotive, not 5 billion times as fast as the speed of light. A good man. No caricature of absolute perfection. What I'm saying is, Martha Kent didn't raise a universe-ending archdemon. Thoughts? I agree with you. I prefer a less powered Superman. That's one of the reasons why I tend to favor the Max Fleischer Superman, because that Superman is, I mean, you never really get a sense of what his limits are in terms of his powers. You never really see his powers like pushed to the breaking point, but he never does anything, he doesn't turn back time. He doesn't survive a nuclear blast. he's sort of, yeah, he has the basic Superman powers. He bullets bounce off of him. He's fast and he can fly and he's really strong and he does the eye shit, you know, uh, and super breath and stuff like that. That's kind of related to his strength. But yeah, he's not like a godlike figure. You know, he doesn't have the uh, excessive level of power that you're talking about in your question there. And I agree with you. I like Superman to be super, but not super to the extent that he can do anything. That's how I uh, like to approach it. Now, a lot of it does depend on the approach. If you are taking a more lighthearted view of the character, if you're writing something like, say, like how Grant Morrison wrote him in All-Star Superman, or how he was written during the Silver Age, which was a big inspiration for All-Star Superman, you can get away with having him be more powerful because you're going for a generally less realistic take on the character. So it's not as important that he be, you know, not as powerful. But if you're going for a more modern, sort of thoughtful take on the character, and you're trying to, I mean, obviously, you by definition, you can't do a realistic Superman story. But if you want to have it rooted in some kind of um, plausible reality as opposed to more of a kind of heightened reality or fantasy world, then I prefer for him to be not overpowered. I'll put it that way. It's hard to talk about Superman in those terms because by definition, Superman is an incredibly powerful being. Even if you have him as just the basic powers, that's still incredibly powerful. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he should be, you know, 5 billion times as fast as the speed of light. And in fact, I'm perfectly fine with the Flash being able to run faster than him. Like, I think we talked about that on a recent live stream. Um, you know, if Superman and the Flash were in a foot race, I think the Flash should win. If they were in a race between the Flash running and Superman flying, well, then it's a little bit more of a race. I don't know. Maybe Superman could beat him there. I don't know. But I don't have a problem. Superman doesn't have to be the best at everything. You know, I think it's more interesting to have him have a ceiling on his powers. But yeah, that's just me. It's been tried other ways and has worked, but that is generally my preference. And like I said, that's why I tend to really like the Fleischer Brothers Superman and rank that very, very high among the many different versions of Superman, possibly my favorite version of Superman. So yeah, thanks for the question. Good question. David Colby. I got a problem. I have this really fun pitch for an idea. It'd make a great Tumblr post or random tweet, but the problem is the premise has yet to suggest to me a narrative. The inspiration came from a history lecture called The Other Side of History, a fascinating, incredibly long lecture that is 100% worth listening to. It's about life for people not recorded in history books, common folk rather than kings. But the point raised was that after the Roman Empire, a conquering invasive force, had left the British Isles, the quality of life for the people on Britain dropped significantly. So, what if the oft repeated alien invasion story has a twist? The aliens invade, conquer the planet, and the quality of life measurably improves for a worrying number of human beings. The aliens have better technology and are interested in people who will work with them rather than existing power structures. The only problem is, now what? Any ideas? Um, well, if the aliens aren't interested in, aren't necessarily invested in working with the existing power structures, and maybe that can be a source of conflict. Maybe the people who are part of the existing power structures who feel potentially threatened or cast aside by these aliens who don't care about them necessarily, who are open to working with everybody regardless of where they sit in the hierarchy, maybe that can be a source of conflict. They can react more hostilely toward the aliens because they feel their position in society and their power being threatened. Maybe that's something that you can kind of grab onto and spin a narrative out of that. That seems like, just from what you've described there, it seems like, to me, that strikes me as the obvious conflict. If the aliens are not, if the aliens don't give a shit about our existing power structures, the people who are at the top of those power structures are probably going to care about that and are going to be invested in either are going to be invested in either convincing the aliens to work with them, or getting rid of the aliens, or subduing the aliens in some way, so they can so they can hold on to their place at the top of the pecking order. So that sounds like the conflict to me. But anyway, that's my idea. You asked if I had any ideas. That's my idea, singular, for that. I don't know if that'll take any place, or if you can do anything with that or not. But thanks for sharing your premise, and I hope that helps. Stephen G. Clenard. Steve, you're a DC Comics guy. Maybe you can help me with some questions that have been vexing me for some time. Given the death of the newspaper and the rise of new media, do you expect many high-profile heroes to transition to social media, and what new tropes might emerge as a result? Do you think modern writers are sufficiently hip to credibly reflect the ways the young people of today use social media? If Clark Kent leaves the Daily Planet, what platform would best suit him? YouTube, Instagram, TikTok? Speaking of which, do you think this would make a good premise for a modern supervillain? The almighty algorithm. This mysterious menace infects the minds of social media influencers, bending their wills to become his unwitting thralls, desperate to gain the fleeting favor of this fickle fiend. Thoughts? I am shocked that has not been the plot of an episode of Supergirl yet. And maybe it has, and it's just one of the ones I've missed. I haven't seen every single episode of Supergirl, but that sounds totally like a Supergirl plot. And I don't mean that disparagingly, because I love the Supergirl show, but that sounds totally like a Supergirl plot. Dana and I have talked about this as we've talked about our fanfic that we're writing together. And we've sort of landed on the idea that the Daily Planet still exists and is still a newspaper, but that it has a much larger sort of online, and eventually when we get to the point in the timeline where social media becomes a thing, because when our stories begin, social media hasn't quite happened yet. But once it does, the planet will have a much more robust social media presence than it has typically been depicted as having. So I don't think Clark would leave the planet. I just think the planet itself would have a much stronger presence on, Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, et cetera. And it might be a funny gag to have some of the, the Daily Planet reporters try to do TikToks, and some of the older ones don't really get it. And Perry White sort of looks at it with disdain, but recognizes that it's necessary to keep up and to maintain, a kind of state-of-the-art presence in the media, even though he kind of just scowls at the whole thing. So, I think stuff like that would be interesting to do. I don't think you necessarily have to say, oh, the Daily Planet would no longer exist. The Daily Planet would exist and does exist, I think, in a modern social media landscape, but it would be similar to other newspapers of real life newspapers of comparable stature, like the New York Times or the Washington Post, where they still publish a daily newspaper. They still have a print edition, but they also have an online edition that is constantly updated and that you can subscribe to for additional stories and additional features. And they do things like producing video content and podcasts and stuff like that, and social media outreach. And that's the kind of thing that the planet would do. I think that's the kind of thing that the planet would have to do. And of course, Clark and Lois and Jimmy and all of our characters could be involved in that as part of their jobs. And some of them probably wouldn't like it very much. But I think that's more of the direction to go. Not so much, oh, Clark, if Superman were created today, he wouldn't work for the Daily Planet. He would have, he'd write articles on Medium and make money through Patreon or whatever. He'd have a Substack or whatever. I don't think that's the more interesting way to go. I think we keep them at the planet. We just change how the planet operates in the modern media landscape. Next question is from Sukareva Syndrome, who says, do you support a condom mandate for people with HIV/AIDS? This came to me while thinking about all of the opposition to mask mandates and the like. When the disease is AIDS, Ryan White was mistreated, swimming pools were shut down, and other measures were done. When it is AIDS, the conservatives want to socially distance themselves real quick. Should people with HIV have a condom mandate too? This is a serious question. I'm actually 50-50 on this. No one has the right to be a danger to themselves or others, while acknowledging that HIV criminalization laws haven't had the best results or intentions behind them. Well, yeah, I mean, the last bit there is the most important part. If you don't want to get into a situation where you are criminalizing just having HIV. Also, I don't think that a condom mandate specifically is a good idea, just because there are medications that people who are HIV positive can take now that lowers their viral load to such a low point that essentially it becomes practically impossible for them to transmit the virus to another person as long as they stay on this medication, and as long as they regularly, go to the doctor and get tested and make sure their levels are right where they need to be. It's, as I would say, it's probably as effective, if not more effective, than using a condom. So, I don't think you need to have a condom mandate. I think it would be fair. It is fair if someone knowingly transmits HIV to another person without that person's knowledge or consent. I think it's completely fair to prosecute that as a crime. But do I think we need to start preemptively treating HIV positive people like criminals? No, I don't. And I mean, you're completely right to point out that conservatives reacted very strongly against AIDS, but that was because they could attach AIDS and HIV to a marginalized group. They made it was the gay cancer. It was the disease that gay people had. It was associated and attached to gay people who conservatives hated already. So they were much more willing to be strongly in favor of measures to isolate and marginalize people who had HIV/AIDS because they considered that synonymous with gay people, and they already wanted to marginalize and isolate gay people. So it was completely in line with their existing ideology, you know. But no, I don't think a condom mandate is a good idea. I think if you can prove that someone with HIV knowingly transmitted it to another person without that person's knowledge or consent, I think it's completely fair to prosecute that as a crime. But do I think we need to start treating HIV positive people, like criminals just because they have HIV? No, I don't think that's a good idea. John Burns, here's a Legal Eagle video about the Texas abortion legislation. And I watched this video the other day, actually, before I even saw John's question. I like Legal Eagle. I try to watch his stuff, if possible, when I see there's a new video up. The Texas law cites the right of people to sue other people in Texas for assisting someone getting an abortion. If it does affect Roe versus Wade, does this mean that there needs to be federal legislation? And is the real problem that the Democrats are worried that if they bring in federal legislation, they'll suffer so badly in the polls to the point that they'll have no power, which is foolish, as the GOP have shown that you can have power in opposition. In Canada, the government would send the issue of abortion to the Supreme Court and the issue would be returned. That's not our problem, it's yours. Federal abortion legislation would come into effect, and then people forgot about such things like Canadian seatbelt legislation in the late 80s. If so, are the Democrats united behind the issue of choice, and is their support strong enough? Well, as is often the case with especially the mainstream of the Democratic Party, no, their support is not strong enough. I mean, it's strong enough in theory, but in terms of how far they're willing to go, how hard they're willing to push, no, I don't think it is strong enough. They are, and you bring up a great point about legislation, because most Democrats, I think pretty much every Democrat that is serving in any kind of significant elected office is pro-choice and is in favor of keeping Roe versus Wade. Now, there are varying degrees of enthusiasm there. Not everybody is, comfortable being a huge unapologetic cheerleader for abortion rights, like I think they should be, and I wish they would be, but they at least believe that Roe should be maintained. But I do think it has been a terrible mistake, both morally and also in terms of politically, to just let things be with Roe for all these years, to sort of say, oh, the Supreme Court declared abortion was legal and people have the right to get abortion, so we're just going to leave it there. We'll just let the Supreme Court ruling stand, and we won't take any additional action to strengthen that right. Because and now we're in a situation where if the court does overturn Roe, then the right to seek an abortion will be gravely threatened in much of the country. And if Congress had acted and passed federal legislation that would apply to the entire country that made it clear that that abortion was a right that people should have, then we would not be in this situation. It would not be as imperiled. I mean, obviously, there would always be the danger that a conservative majority could rise up and repeal the law and say, ah, ha, ha, it's illegal. After all, I mean, that's a situation you run into a lot with a lot of different issues, but it would have at least been stronger than just the court ruling. So I am completely in agreement with you there that the Democrats, at some point in the last nearly 50 years, should, and the Democrats have had control of both houses of Congress and have had Democratic presidents for various times during that interval. And it would have been a really good idea for a Democratic majority with a Democratic president sitting in the White House to pass a bill clarifying that the right to abortion is legal, that people do have the right to seek abortions in the United States. It has been legislatively established. It has been codified in law. It's not just the result of a Supreme Court ruling. It is the law of the land, and all of the states must abide by it. I think that would have been a terrific idea, and I think it still would be. Azalea Jane, hey Steve, having not seen all of your Trek content quite yet, I'm wondering if you've touched much on the subject of Data's emotions. I started a rewatch of TNG a few months ago and was inspired to play a little game I call Data Emotion Spotting. It's fun. Data repeatedly claims to not have emotions, but he also routinely displays them. Even in the pilot, he says, "I'll gladly give it up to be human." Glad is an emotion, and has a triumphant look on his face when he lifts Wesley out of the water. From then on, he regularly exhibits emotions like excitement, confusion, interest, eagerness, even insecurity. My interpretation is that TNG Data does exhibit some degree of muted rudimentary emotions, but is not quite self-aware of them. He exhibits them, but does not experience them. This, as with the Vulcans, makes me think about the blurry boundary between emotion and thought. I don't think it's a true dichotomy or trichotomy if you include instinct. Any thoughts on that? Well, no, I that is a very popular interpretation of Data. That he is not consciously aware of it, but that he does have emotions. And I think that's a completely fair way to read his character. As far as I know, canonically, or, according to a word of God, or however you want to phrase it, officially, when he does not have his emotionship, Data does not have emotions. But I think mostly due to the fact that Brent Spiner plays him in a certain way, and Brent Spiner, especially even after we get past, because in the first season, I agree, in the first season, he seems very emotional. He seems to exhibit emotion frequently that he's not supposed to have. But I think once Brent Spiner, when you get into season 2, and then especially once you get to season 3 and forward, when he's really dialed in the character and he, as the performer, has figured out who Data is, he still plays him in a way that, even though there's not as much overt emotion, you're right, he seems curious, he seems inquisitive. And if these are not emotional states, they are certainly very close to it. He develops close relationships with people. He has preferences. He has likes and dislikes. He has things that he looks forward to. He has things that he doesn't seem to look forward to. And, part of that is just the inevitability of an actor, a human actor who does have emotions, having to play a character who supposedly doesn't have emotions, and there isn't that much of a frame of reference. Like, how do you, as a person who feels emotions all the time, play a character who supposedly doesn't feel emotions and play that character in a way that will still be engaging and relatable to people, so you're not just playing a zombie? right? That's a really tough uh, channel to navigate there. You know, that's you're really threading a needle. And Brent Spiner, I think, does a really good job as Data throughout TNG. But I do think a lot of the, you know, the inadvertent emotion that Data shows, or the sort of secret emotion that Data shows, is due to that, because you have to give a performance and you have to have a character that people will be able to engage with, that isn't just a flat, unaffected robot. You have to give Data some personality. And it's hard to give a character personality without injecting a little bit of emotion, at least, into it. So I think that's what happened. And I think that's why Data often appears to be more emotional than he's supposed to be, or supposedly capable of being. And but as a result, I mean, but it's all on screen and it's all fair game for interpretation of the story and the character. So I think it's completely fair to interpret Data that way and to say that he actually does have emotions. He just doesn't have an awareness of them. I don't think that was ever the intention of any of the writers, at least as far as I know. Um, but I think it's definitely there on screen. And also, I think, I agree with you about there not being a hard boundary between emotion and thought. I think it's difficult to separate the two, and that's another, which kind of goes back to what I was saying about the difficulty of giving a performance. You know. Next question is from Kaylee, who says, Mpok, there it is. Mpok Nor, DS9, Season 5, Episode 25, is an episode where we see Garak become exposed to a psychoactive drug that causes murderous impulses and turns him into a Cardassian jigsaw. Oh, I like that. At the end of the episode, Bashir explains that the drug brought out the worst traits of Garak and amplified them, ignoring the dubious medical science behind that logic. Do you think that the worst traits shown expose something frightening behind Garak's true character? I can't help but think, if your worst self thinks to hang dead soldiers as decorations to intimidate, you just might be a bad person. On the other hand, the ep starts with Garak wanting to play a game and passive aggressively implying that no one ever invited him for dinner. Maybe he really was that bored. I think it's probably also having something to do with his training as a former agent of the Obsidian Order. You know, one of the things that makes Garak such a fascinating and more morally ambiguous character is that it's at the very least strongly hinted, and I think a couple times he flat out says, although you can never quite take him at his word, that when he was in the Obsidian Order, he did some pretty messed up stuff. Like he was into some dark shit. And I think that's part of what comes out with Garak in Mpok Nor, is that he is capable of that. It may not be it's not his best self. It may not be the person that he wants to be at this point in his life, because I think throughout the series we also get hints that where he is now, Garak is bothered by a lot of what he did. Garak feels guilt or remorse for a lot of what he did while he was in the Obsidian Order, but he is still capable of doing some really, really twisted, evil stuff. And I think that's what comes out of him under the influence of the drugs. I think that's what Bashir means by bringing out his worst traits. And I mean, whether you think Garak is a redeemable character or not, that stuff is in the show, and it's a part of the character, and you can't ignore the fact. Like, if you believe that he is a redeemable character, you can't ignore the fact that he has done some really, really fucked up shit, and stuff that if someone did it to someone in real life, it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to forgive. So yeah, so yes, I do think it exposes something frightening behind Garak's true character, but it is something that was hinted at, I think, quite a bit before that episode. But maybe you're right. Maybe he was just really bored. And he was like, this is my shot. This is my shot. Next question is from Agent Meister, Peldor Joy. Steve, I recently booked flights from Ireland to Greece to take part in a marathon as an amateur, some might say mediocre. This is something I used to do once a year before COVID and have been itching to be able to do it again. However, the recent climate change report that basically says that the world is fucked has rained on my parade somewhat. I tried to limit my carbon footprint by reducing, reusing, and recycling whenever I can. I neither have nor want children, one reason being the natural resources needed to raise a child, and flying is something I do only once a year. I realize how privileged I am to be able to travel abroad and to be healthy enough to run a marathon. Acquaintances of mine find fulfillment in family and their careers, etc., but travel/sport is my jam. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and advice on how I can have my cake and eat it. Agent Meister in Ireland. P.S. I loved your recent Batman video with Dana. Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed that video too. I love making videos with Dana. We always do our live streams every week, but every once in a while when we both have the time and we can record ourselves having a conversation about something nerdy that we both have thoughts on, like Batman or the video we did about Zootopia or other stuff, or political stuff. We're planning a more political video coming up in the near future. But yeah, it's always a blast to make videos with Dana. So I'm glad you liked it. I think you should be commended for your consciousness and for your thoughtfulness on this and for recycling and, trying to watch your carbon footprint. I think all of that is important. And I think it's great that you are concerned about that and aware of that. But I wouldn't feel too bad because, as has been brought up before on this channel, I think in another one of these Ask Away streams, when we've talked about environmental issues and we've talked about specifically climate change, the solution to climate change, the ultimate solution to climate change, is large scale, not small scale. And it needs to be done on the scale of governments and multinational corporations and big level stuff like that, not just individual people changing their behavior. Individual people changing their behavior can make a difference. And if billions of individual people all change their behavior in a positive way, I have no doubt that would be a big impact for the good. But ultimately, it's not up to us as individuals. It's up to governments and to big companies who are the drivers of the types of pollution that are causing climate change. So I wouldn't feel too bad if I were you about flying to Greece once a year to run a marathon, or if maybe you feel like you generated too much trash this month, or you didn't recycle as much as you wanted to, or you ordered takeout and you had food containers to throw away and you feel guilty about that. I mean, that's all that speaks to your character, and that speaks to what a good person you are and how conscientious you are about really important stuff. But I also think if you ever get thinking about it too much and too worried about whether or not you're making a negative impact on the world, I think you need to let yourself off the hook a little bit, because it sounds like you're already doing a lot more than a lot of other people are doing to help those situations. And ultimately, it's not your responsibility as an individual. So there you go. I don't know if that means having your cake and eating it, but I would say it's okay to let yourself off the hook and to go to Greece once a year and run your marathon and do things, generally speaking, as responsibly as you can, but do things, generally speaking, that give your life meaning and give your life joy, and not go too far out of your way to feel bad about it, because it sounds like you're a very thoughtful and conscientious person. Next question is from Matt Lordy. Hi, Steve. Do you feel that we will ever have a post-capitalist society? The pessimist in me believes that humanity will not survive the externalities caused by such an unsustainable economic system. What do you think will be the big social and political changes needed for us to move to a fully sustainable civilization? Do you feel as though they are realistic given our current conditions? Been watching your channel for years, and particularly your political content. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, Matt, very much. I appreciate that. I don't think I will live to see it. I do think eventually, at some point in the future history of human civilization, we will get to a point where we are in a post-capitalist society. I do not think it will happen in my lifetime or in the lifetime of anyone watching this. But I do think it will happen at some point. I think it's probably inevitable at some point because this goes to the second part of your question. Um, as you said, the way we are currently doing things is in the long term unsustainable. We can't just go on depleting resources forever. Eventually we're going to run out of resources. You know, we can't just keep allowing the wealth gap to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually the people at the bottom, eventually there will be enough people at the bottom and they will be pissed off enough that they will no longer tolerate being abused and exploited uh, the way that they currently are in many circumstances. Like that's not, it's just economically, morally, politically, environmentally, it is not a long-term sustainable system. So I think eventually we will either have to transition to a more sustainable system and a more equitable system, or that will be it. Or there will be some truly devastating cataclysm, again, either economic or natural disaster or some, some kind of major military conflict or whatever. Something will happen to just drive everything back to square one, and the survivors will basically start over, you know. Um, but even if we don't get to that point, even if something of that magnitude doesn't happen, I do think it will, the catalyst for something that big, for that kind of major social and political change, well, it'll be some kind of terrible situation. It'll be some kind of collapse. I would like to say that wouldn't be necessary. I would like to say that we could, that we could look at a reasonable forecast of our future on our own and take steps to prevent the worst things from happening before they happen, and say, just of our own volition, be it through ourselves as individuals or through our governments or whatever, be able to say, hey, if we keep going the way we're going, it's eventually going to end in horrible disaster. Probably not for us, but for our children or our grandchildren or something. Somebody somewhere down the line is going to have to live in an absolutely horrible world, even worse than this one, unless we start changing some things now, get some wheels turning right now so that we don't have that. I would like to think I think we're capable of that. I just don't think we're going to do that, because I think history has shown that we don't usually do that. We wait until something horrible happens and then we say, "Oh, Jesus, that sucked. We need to do something. We need to take care of it." It's like when you have a heart attack and then you say, "Oh, I need to start working out. I need to join a gym. I need to start walking. I need to start doing more cardio." Like you wait until something terrible happens and then it shakes you up and you're like, "Oh shit, I need to start doing better," right? That's how human society tends to work. The United Kingdom introduced the National Health Service after World War II. They could have done that at any time. They didn't need to wait until after World War II to introduce national health care. They could have done it before World War II. They could have done it at any time, but they didn't. They waited until after World War II. So, they waited until after the cataclysm, and then they thought, "Oh shit, we got to do better," and that's kind of how it tends to work, unfortunately. So I think that's how it's going to work for capitalism. But I don't think I don't see it happening in our lifetime. No, unfortunately. Some random geek who hates how many of their friends are just struggling to just survive. I was in a call with a group of folks. One was talking about the ills of capitalism going on right now, and I was nodding along. Someone said, "I'm sure things were worse under feudalism. Why do people do this? This actually makes me mad. Capitalism is a terrible system of coercion and exploitation. The profit motive is evil. Tavi, Joanna, Phoenix, Leto Anor, and many others are suffering under the ableism of capitalism. Many have to beg online just to survive. But someone has to do whataboutism and say, I bet it sucks more under feudalism. Why do folks have to play defense attorney for capitalism?" And then there are others who would credit the effort of the workers to capitalism and say, "Yay, capitalism." I hate those folks too. So many people need to be re-educated. Plus, Leto Anor has 400 euros of overdraft fees and the bank denies her request for a loan to pay that off. And I can't help that much without maxing out my credit cards. Yay, capitalism. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point about crediting the effort of workers to capitalism like as an entity and saying, see, capitalism, and it's not actually capitalism, it's people doing that labor that accomplished whatever they're celebrating. um yeah, I mean, maybe part of that is, you say they're playing defense attorney. Maybe part of that is just a defense mechanism, you know, and they're not necessarily, and this is not an excuse, by the way, because I think in general, I agree with you. Uh, but maybe it's an attempt to sort of cope with the situation that we're in. And sometimes it helps some people to be able to believe that things are not as bad now as they could be or as they have been in the past. And there are a lot, even if you don't appeal to feudalism, you can make an argument that, at least for many of us in the United States, not all of us, unfortunately, and not for everybody around the world, but for many of us in the United States, even those of us who are in economically bad situations or in some financial distress, it is better now than it has been in the past. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to make things better. That doesn't mean we shouldn't keep pushing for reform. That doesn't mean that there are not things in the current system that need to be radically changed and improved. It doesn't mean there's any excuse for the suffering of people in poverty, or for people like the folks you mentioned, like Joanna and Phoenix and Tavi and Leto and others that you know and that we both know, um, who are in trouble because they have a disability and they aren't able to work, or they are able to work but they can't find a job that pays enough, or they have kids, or they have other bills that there's not much they can do about them, and they just don't have enough money to afford them, and the government services that are supposed to help them out aren't helping them out enough, or in some cases aren't helping them out at all. And I mean, I don't need to tell you, you know about it more than I do. um it's no excuse for any of that, and it doesn't make any of that any better for the people who are suffering under it. But you can make the case that things are better now for a lot of people than they were 50 or 100 years ago. But I do not think you should be bringing that up in a conversation when people are talking about, especially when people are complaining about their personal situation. Like if someone who is struggling to pay their bills, and their disability check isn't enough to cover their bills, and they're worried about how they're going to pay their, how they're going to pay off their credit card, or how they're going to pay their rent, or how they're going to, pay for their kids' clothes or whatever. And you say, well, but I bet people in the feudal system had it even worse. Or you say, oh, but people 100 years ago probably had it even worse. That's not the right time to say that. That doesn't help anybody, because the person who is suffering today is still suffering. So, whether and this applies whether you think capitalism is a salvageable system or not. It's just a fucked up thing to say. Like, just don't say that. And try not to think that. It's a fucked up thing to think too. Like, oh yeah, I know. I know that things suck for you right now, but 100 years ago, they probably would have sucked even more. Like, okay, how does that help me? Oh, don't worry, kids. Don't worry, kids. I know that you haven't been able to buy new shoes for a year, and the soles are falling out, and I know that you're wearing hand-me-down clothes, and I know that we barely have enough to eat, and we're worried month to month if we're even going to have a roof over our heads. And you need to go see the doctor, and I can't afford it. Yeah, I know all of that, but hey, take heart, because 100 years ago things would have been even worse. Like, what? That, or if we were serfs, we'd really be screwed. Like, what does that, it's, yeah. Next question is from Blue Tree, who says, hi, Steve. I don't know if this has been covered before. My apologies if it has, but have you ever done a deep dive into the Kes-Nelix relationship? When Voyager first came out, I didn't think too much of it, but seeing it through a new lens today, it's just, ew. I mean, she's how old? And he's how old? I think I threw up in my mouth a little. Please tell me your insights on what the writers could be thinking and how I can wash out my brain. I think that is a byproduct of how a lot of TV shows back in the day were written by dirty, perverted men who were preoccupied with the idea of an older man in a relationship with a younger woman. You saw another example of it in a slightly different way in Buffy the Vampire Slayer with Buffy and Angel, where Angel is something like 140, 150 years old, and he starts dating and having sex with Buffy while she is in high school. I mean, like, okay, Angel, I mean, and Angel was too old for her before he got vamped. Think about that. Angel was already too old for her when he got turned into a vampire. Because she's like, what, 16 or 17 when they start fucking? And he's like an ancient vampire. But even if he wasn't, he was still like in his 30s. But that was a recurring trope. You know, and with Neelix and Kes, it's a similar situation. Only instead of Neelix being ancient and Kes being young, Kes is part of this species that only lives for 9 years. And I think when the series starts, Kes is said to be about 2. But her maturity level and her physical sort of age looks like she's maybe early 20s, late teens, early 20s. It's with TV, it's hard to tell because you can never tell if the character is supposed to be the same age as the actor. But I think Jennifer Leanne was what, in her early 20s when she started playing Kes, maybe mid 20s. I'm not sure exactly how old she was, but she didn't look terribly old, right? And Neelix would have been, again, especially because he's an alien, it's hard to tell, and you don't know if the ages are equivalent with humans and with the alien. It's all imaginary anyway. Who gives a shit? Neelix reads to me as being like in his late 30s or early 40s at least. So he seems too old for her, you know? But yeah, that was just for whatever reason. And I think part of the reason was that, you know, it was that a lot of TV shows were written by, you know, perverted dudes who had fantasies about younger women, and they put that into the show. I think it was in part, at least, a byproduct of that. And, you know, yeah, like I say, it wasn't just Voyager. It was other shows as well. I think the most egregious offender was probably Buffy because of the size of the fictional age difference there. And, you know, the idea that, you know, oh, but, you know, she's much more mature than her age would suggest, you know. And I guess with Kes, you could really say that, because with Kes, like, oh, she's only 2, but look, she was 2 going on 20. Come on, you know. But I think that had a lot to do with it. That the you know, the frequency with which that trope was deployed. I think it has a lot to do with that. You know, it's it's unfortunate. But no, I've never done a video about that. But I think that is in my list of future topics, and maybe it's not in the current poll, but maybe I don't think I've ever put it in a poll. I'll add it to the poll next month if I remember, and I'll make a note for myself when I get done with the stream here. For the next poll, it'll be a Neelix and Kes video that members and patrons can vote on, because that's a good topic. And there, as you can see there, and it allows you to branch out into so many other issues, which I like to do if possible when I do those Trek Actually videos. Next question is from General Contact Unit Problem Child. Suppose Texas wasn't a state in the U.S. Suppose it was still just another country that bordered the U.S. Would you be as upset about the women and trans people with wombs they're having their rights stripped? So there are places in the world where women and trans people with wombs are objectively treated a lot worse than in Texas, but I don't get nearly as upset about that. Most Western progressives don't. I think the reason for that is America has a massive political influence on where I live. So if people in America are losing their rights, that doesn't bode well for what might happen in my country in the future. What's happening in somewhere like Saudi Arabia is worse, but there's no real chance of that shit spreading to the UK. If Texas was its own country and there was no chance that the shit going on there was going to spread to the rest of the US, i.e., and possibly affect people you know personally, would you be as upset about it? In all honesty, no, I wouldn't. And I think there's a degree to which that's understandable, because you do, I think, naturally care about and have a greater emotional investment in people who are part of a group that you are also a part of. So of course I am more immediately concerned about the abortion rights of people who live in my country than I am about the abortion rights of people who live in other parts of the world. And that doesn't mean that the rights of those people or that the lives of those people matter less. It just means that from my own perspective, I am more immediately invested in the rights of people who are close to me, or the rights of people who, as you said, who possibly have more of an influence on me, or are affected by things that could also affect me. I think that's just a natural human thing. I think it's good to push against that. I think it's good to remind ourselves that, oh, there are people in other parts of the world that we don't usually think about on a day-to-day basis that are living lives where their rights and freedoms are even more severely restricted than people in this country. I think we should not forget that by any means. And if there are things we can do to raise our voices in support of them or to help them, we should be doing those things. But I think it's a very natural thing to be more concerned about things happening in your own backyard than things happening in the next town over. And again, and to a certain extent, I think that's healthy, because you can also do the opposite, where people, Geek in his question talked about whataboutism, and there's a lot of whataboutism that is done about people who want to avoid having to deal with moral and ethical and human rights issues in this country, so they appeal to those other places in the world where people have it even worse. They say, like, oh, you think gender inequality is a problem here, you think they mistreat gay people here, you think trans people have it rough here. What about Russia? What about Saudi Arabia? What about Uganda and other places where there are even harsher environments for marginalized people? And what they're doing is they're trying to make an excuse to not deal with the problems that we have, that we could actually do more about. Like, there's not a whole lot we as Americans can, unfortunately, there's really not a whole lot that we as Americans can do to help the plight of gay people in Uganda, or women or gay people or trans people in Saudi Arabia. There's not much that we can do, but we can have more of an influence and more of an effect on those groups that are suffering here in our country. But when someone says, oh, but they have it worse over there, what about over there? What they're often doing is trying to silence and shut down the discussion about problems that are taking place under our roof, so that we can pretend that they don't matter because there's other places where it's even worse. So yeah, it's important to be mindful of all of that. But I do think there's a point up to which it is understandable that we are more that because Texas is a state in my country, that is part of the reason why I am as concerned about it as I am. And it's not completely a good thing, but it's an understandable thing. Question from Isaiah Taylor, who says, so this is a 9/11 themed Ask Away. First, where were you on 9/11? Also, I've decided to write my 9/11 script, but instead of focusing on the heroism and jingoism of the event, I've decided to make it an everyman story, in which it follows a bunch of friends, individuals, and just regular people going through and dealing with the attacks. One group are some friends visiting their friend in New York City during the attacks, and they're like a block and a half from the World Trade Center. Also, the X-Files spin-off The Lone Gunman pilot episode, in which the CIA tried to crash a plane into the World Trade Center. Coincidence, yes, but it's way too close to what was to become. I received my certificate on the 24th, and I will be going to Kennedy Space Center the next day. What do you think? Well, first of all, congratulations on finishing film school. I hope you have a great time at the Kennedy Space Center. That sounds awesome. I've never been to the Kennedy Space Center. I really would like to go sometime. But it's way the hell down in Florida. But so first and foremost, congratulations and good job on finishing film school. And I hope you have a great time going to the Kennedy Space Center. And yeah, there's that X-File, or there's the Lone Gunman episode. There's also the Simpsons episode where there's the shot that the conspiracy theorists were trying to make a big deal out of, where like Bart holds up a a magazine, a New York magazine, and there's the Twin Towers, and then there's also there's a number 9 on the cover, and like the 9 in front of the Twin Towers looks like 9/11, and people are like, "See, The Simpsons predicted 9/11 in like 1996 or whenever that episode aired." Um, and also I'll just go backwards through your question. I really like your idea of for a 9/11 script of making it an everyman story. I had an idea right after 9/11 happened. I had an idea for it. I didn't know if it was going to be a screenplay or a stage play or what, but I had an idea for something that would have been like that. It wouldn't have taken place in New York City at all. It would have been sort of semi-autobiographical. It would have been about a group of people in other parts of the country on 9/11, and just, how they reacted to the attacks and what they were thinking and what they were feeling on that day, and on the days that followed. And it would have been, yeah, it wouldn't have been about the military or about the first responders or about people that, were there on that day or were directly affected by it. It would have been about the people sort of out in the country, in other parts of the country that were living through that time. So I'm naturally very drawn to your idea because it reminds me of, and I never even wrote it, I don't think, but I think that's a potentially a really good concept. And where was I on 9/11? Well, back then, Dana and I were still a couple. Most people know by now, once upon a time, Dana and I were together, and I was at Dana's house. And we were actually, when I look back on it now, it seems so harebrained, but we had this really shaggy, like half-assed plan to drive up to Canada and go to the Toronto Film Festival. We had made no official plans. We hadn't bought tickets to any of the screenings. We didn't have a place to stay. It was basically, hey, let's drive to Toronto and go to the Toronto Film Festival and just assume we'll be able to find a place to stay and assume we'll be able to get into the screenings, and come on, let's just go, right? It's quaint, how it's just like, hey, yeah, screw it, let's just go, right? There's something so romantic about that. Like, let's just go. We don't need to make a plan. Can you imagine doing that today? Like having nothing to do with 9/11, but just like you can just pick up your phone and book a hotel and, check travel routes and buy tickets to the thing. Like there's no way you would ever plan to just like, let's just get in the car and go. Like, but that was our plan. And we were supposed to go. We were supposed to leave on 9/11. Like after she got off work, we were supposed to start our probably very ill-considered journey up to Canada for the Toronto Film Festival. And that was the morning of 9/11, and the border was closed and the whole country shut down, and nobody knew what was going to happen next, and it was 9/11, man. So I remember very well where I was. I remember waking up in Dana's apartment, and she had already gone to work, and I think I turned on the radio and heard it, or maybe she called me from her. She worked at a chiropractor's office back then, and maybe she called me and told me what was going on and said, "Turn on the radio," or go to the internet, like something's going on. And I remember going to the chiropractor's office after when she was about to get off work, and after the office closed, and we were just hanging out in the office, and that was when I first saw it on TV, because I don't think Dana didn't have TV back then, and I was out of town, away from my place, staying with her, and so it was several hours after it happened that I actually saw it on TV. But yeah, I remember very well where I was. I remember very well where I was. I remember a few weeks later, probably not even a few weeks later, I remember a couple of days later when I was back home in Hagerstown, and I was working at Pilot, the only legitimate job I've ever had in my life. I was a maintenance worker at the Pilot Travel Center truck stop in Hagerstown, and I was at work when they played the first video from Osama bin Laden after the attacks. And people who are old enough to remember, Osama bin Laden would send in videos to Al Jazeera that would then be distributed to all the networks. And so Osama bin Laden had like a message for the people of the United States that he recorded on video and, sent to the news agency. And I remember thinking, this is like something out of a movie. Like, this is the supervillain addressing the people of the world on TV. Like, this is like Lex Luthor or something. You know what I mean? Like, this is the guy who masterminded 9/11, and now he's on TV talking to us about 9/11 and like making threats and promising what he's going to do next and all. And, and it was surreal. It was one of the most surreal shared cultural moments I've ever been a part of. I've never felt that way since, where it's like, can you believe this shit? Like, looking at my coworkers, looking at customer, like everybody in the store was standing looking at the TVs we had on display in the store, like for people to buy, right? Tuned to the news channels. And we're all standing around the TV watching this. I mean, I'm on the clock. I'm just standing there not doing my work, looking at the TV. My boss is standing right next to me. We're looking at each other like, can you believe this shit? So yeah, it was quite a moment. Yes, I remember a lot of stuff from the day of 9/11 and from the days and weeks that followed. I still have a very vivid memory of a lot of that stuff. Matthew Zeidman says, "Hi, Steve. I recently rewatched the season 4 TNG episode Clues and wanted your take on it. Spoilers ahead. The writers go out of their way in previous and later episodes to show that Data is capable of disobeying orders when he feels it's the right thing to do and can reevaluate his beliefs when faced with an ethical dilemma. I thought that went out the window here. When Data treats Picard's order to keep silent about the alien encounter and memory wipe as sacrosanct. Data even remains silent when Picard orders the Enterprise back to the Mystery Planet, and Troy is having terrifying hallucinations as a result of the possession she doesn't even remember. What obligation would Data have had to obey an order Picard gave when he essentially had a gun pointed at his head? If Data truly valued the safety and well-being of his crewmates, he would have told them what happened as soon as they regained consciousness. What are your thoughts?" Well, I like that episode a lot, but I hear what you're saying. That is a valid criticism. And I think the choice that the writer or writers of that episode made was to ignore certain things that had been established previously about Data and his ethical capabilities and how maybe he would respond to an order like that in that sort of a situation, to throw that out the window in favor of telling that particular story the way that they felt it needed to be told. And clearly it was very important to the writers of that story to preserve that big reveal at that, not the end of the episode, but near the end of the episode. That final sort of twist because, Data has been behaving strangely for the whole episode. And eventually the crew kind of catches on and starts to wonder, like, has he been compromised? Is there some, malevolent intelligence manipulating? Why is Data acting this way? And it builds to that moment where they're all on the bridge and Picard lays his cards on the table and says, "Mr. Data, I don't know what's going on, but I am ordering you to tell me, what the deal is." And Data says, "I can't tell you that." And Data says, I'm under orders not to disclose, the nature of what is happening here." And Picard's like, "Well, who gave you that order?" And cut to Data, big dramatic moment right before the commercial. He says, "You did, sir." Bum, bum, bum. And clearly that was like the writers who conceived that episode saw that as the big moment in the episode. That's what everything has been building to. What's the answer to the question? What's the solution to the mystery? Why is Data acting this way? Is Data being controlled by something? What is going on? Data was ordered to conceal the truth. By who? By Captain Picard. And that opens up it takes things in a completely different direction. It opens up a whole new avenue of, oh shit, now what's going on, right? It's a really, really well-crafted moment, I think. So they decided to go for that, and that meant ignoring certain things about the way Data behaves and the way he might respond to such an order, and situations where yeah, you're right, he does have the capability to say, okay, I know I told Captain Picard I would follow that order, but in this situation I think it's better for me to disobey the order and to do this and this and this instead to help my friends, or to make the overall situation better. Yes, I agree, he would be and should be capable of doing that, but for this story to work the way they needed it to, as you say in your question, they needed to take some of that and chuck it out the window in favor of getting to the point they needed to get to in their story. And as I've said many times, I think that's completely fine. As long as you're telling a story that's good enough to justify it, I think all of that stuff is completely fine. And I think Clues is a pretty good episode. Dataport doll. Do puppets dream of electric mayhem? No, 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 no. Muppets dream of electric mayhem. They're not puppets, doll. They're not puppets. They're Muppets. Muppets are different. Muppets aren't puppets. That's all I got on that. But by the way, I just want to that's a fantastic line, by the way. I love that. Do puppets dream of electric mayhem? Exquisite. Nicely done. Nicely done. Here's one from Russell who says, hey, Steve, I'm curious. So what do you think is the worst episode of Quantum Leap? For that matter, what is the best? I can honestly say I don't think there is an episode that I don't like. Mind you, now they weren't all of the great quality, unlike TNG, for example, another show I love, for example. Anyways, just curious. As for my favorite, that too is tough. Because, like you said, when Quantum Leap got good, it got good, ranging from episodes like Jimmy, The Leap Back, The Leap Home 1 and 2, even first season's Color of Truth, and season 5. Just wow. Anyways, I thought I would keep this short as I'm still recovering from surgery and don't spend too much time online or doing much of anything but laying down. I'm getting better slowly, though. So again, thank you, and I trust you are well. See you today. Well, I hope you are continuing to recover and feel better, my friend. And thank you for the question, and thank you for giving me an excuse to talk about Quantum Leap, which, as you have guessed, and as you could tell probably from when we talked about it on our live stream on Wednesday this week, one of my favorite shows. Worst episode? I don't know. I mean, somebody in the chat the other night mentioned the episode where he becomes the chimp. That's not that great of an episode. The Dr. Ruth episode isn't really my favorite. I mean, it's not as bad as some people might think, but it's not like if I were to tell you, oh, a Quantum Leap, and the premise is Sam leaps into the body of Dr. Ruth, you would probably assume that would be like absolute dog shit. And I don't think it's great, but it's not as bad as you might think it is. So I'll say that much for it. I still don't think the pilot is all that good. When I'm thinking about really bad Quantum Leap episodes, I usually go back to the first episode, because I mean, part of it is like the pilot had a lot of work to do. There was a lot of heavy lifting for the first episode of Quantum Leap. It was an incredibly complicated premise with a lot of moving parts that had to be introduced to an audience for the first time. And so it does an okay job at that, but the storytelling is really clumsy. There are some really, really corny moments. It's just not a good episode, especially when you compare it to how good the show got after that. So I would nominate the pilot episode for worst episode. But I am, of course, open to suggestions. As for best episodes, I generally name the episode Running for Honor as my favorite episode, which is not only a good episode in terms of drama and in terms of just a Quantum Leap episode, but it's a great time capsule to look back on now for how gay issues were dealt with on mainstream television, network television in the United States in the early 90s. Quantum Leap was a very progressive show. And Quantum Leap and the creators and producers of Quantum Leap, when they did an episode where Sam leapt into a gay person, they wanted to make an episode that was supportive and, in favor of treating gay people with equality and respect and dignity and not making fun of them and not degrading them or demeaning them. And um, the episode does that, but it also does the thing where it's an open question as to whether or not the person that Sam leaps into even is gay. He leaps into a cadet at a military academy in, I think, the 70s maybe, or the 80s, who is thought of as being gay, who is suspected of being gay, but is never confirmed as being gay or not. And it builds up to a great final moment between Sam and Al, where Al has been cast as the homophobic one in the episode. He's the one who's very uncomfortable with the idea that Sam has leapt into a gay person. He's just, and he has all these very old-fashioned, very outmoded, bigoted ideas about, gay people don't belong in the military, et cetera, which was a very hot button issue at the time. And Al eventually comes around and sees the error of his ways and admits that, he was thinking the wrong way, and he was being unreasonable and prejudiced, and he shouldn't have said the things he said, and he shouldn't have felt the things he felt, and that sort of. It's a nice moment between Sam and Al, and then Al says, "But there's just one thing that I still don't know, Sam." And Sam's like, "What?" And Al says, "Is he gay or not?" And Sam looks at Al and says, "Does it matter?" And that's the moment that he leaps, and that's like the parting thought of the episode. Doesn't matter. And the reason I say it's a time capsule is because it's from a period in recent American history where most gay people were, because of social pressure, were compelled to spend most of their lives closeted. They didn't feel comfortable being open about their sexuality, except to people who they felt who they were close to and that they could trust, and at work, at school, if they had any kind of public life, they very often kept it to themselves because they felt threatened if people knew the truth. And so that was the context in which that episode was produced, and therefore it made a lot of sense to have the character be, if he was gay, have him be closeted, and have, whether he was actually gay or not be an open question. Today, I don't think we would make it that way. Today, you wouldn't do the episode in the same way, but back in the early 90s, that's how they did it. So it's a good episode, and it's a good sort of time capsule of how those issues were dealt with on TV back then. And that's my standard response to people asking what's your favorite Quantum Leap episode. But it's a tough call because, God, I love that show. Next question is from Siamak, who says, I shall not miss my chance at asking a question this week, or shall I? We shall see. You got it in plenty of time, man. Plenty of time. Would love to hear your thoughts on the vaccine mandates. I'm all for them. Make the world smaller and smaller for the voluntarily unvaxxed. While I do have some discomfort with government mandates, 1, we've used them plenty before. 2, they had their chance to do the right thing. So ultimately, would you support essentially keeping the voluntarily unvaxxed restricted to their homes? I'm pretty much there. I agree with you 100%. I have no problem with vaccine mandates. It's a public health crisis. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead in this country alone. There are vaccines that can help to control the spread and mitigate the symptoms of the virus. If you don't get vaccinated, you are a threat to other people. You are a threat to continue to spread the virus and prolong the pandemic and endanger the lives of other people. Yes, you should be, unless you have a legitimate medical issue that you can get a deferment from it. Yes, you should be compelled to take the vaccine. And if you don't take it, then yes, there should be limitations on what you can do. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think it should be a mandate. I don't think we should send troops to people's houses to kick down the door and forcibly inject them. I think it should be a voluntary thing. But yes, there should be limitations. If you are not just like you can't send your kid to public school unless they have the requisite vaccines. Because like you say, we've used them before. Nobody's going to come to your house and force you to vaccinate your kid. But if you want your kid to go to school, they need to get vaccinated. That's just the way it is. And it should be that if during the COVID pandemic, if you are medically able to be vaccinated, if you don't have a legitimate medical issue that is preventing you from getting vaccinated, if you are unvaxxed by choice, as you say in your question, then there are things you shouldn't be able to do. And states and even the federal government should be allowed to say, hey, if you want to go out to a restaurant, if you want to go to a concert, if you want to travel beyond a certain distance, if you want to go to a baseball game or a football game or whatever, you should have to be vaccinated. The vaccines are widely available. They're free. Unless you have a medical condition, there is no reason not to get vaccinated. So fucking do it. Stop being a baby about it. Stop acting like you're, making some bold statement for liberty and freedom. It's a vaccine to protect not just you, but everybody you come in contact with from a virus that kills people. And many of the people it doesn't kill, it debilitates so seriously that they continue to suffer from it for months and potentially, we don't even know yet, potentially even years afterwards. So take the goddamn vaccine and shut up and stop being a fucking baby about it. I'm 100% with you on this. I'm 100% with you on this. Next question is from Dana. You did such a good job with the Perfect Strangers theme song. Well, thank you. I don't know if that will be everybody's opinion. So now, of course, we need to know more. Why do you like this show so much? What's your favorite episode? Why? Which character is better, Cousin Larry or Cousin Balky? I love that you spelled it Cousin. Why? That's all I can think of, but feel free to talk about the show more. So, okay, Perfect Strangers was my first favorite show. I don't know if anybody else can remember. Probably a lot of you can. Like the first show you can remember thinking of as your favorite show, right? I remember Perfect Strangers was my first favorite show. And because it started in 1986, so I was a little kid when it started. I don't remember if I watched it from the very beginning, but I started watching it pretty early on. And watched it all the way, till the end of its original run. And it was just when I was a kid, it was just a likable, funny show. And I liked Larry and I liked Balky and I thought they got along great. And I thought they had, fun, wacky adventures. And as I got a little older, I started to recognize other things in the show that I liked. As I developed a little bit of a critical eye as like a 10 and 11 and 12-year-old, I started to notice things like that their comic timing was really good. Like Mark Linn-Baker and Bronson Pinchot, who played Larry and Balky respectively, had fantastic comic timing. And that's the saving grace of the show when I watch it today, because as I discovered much later in life, when I went back to it and watched it with the fresh eyes of an adult, I realized that it's not that well written of a show most of the time. It's not that great of a show. It's sort of a corny 1980s, early 90s sitcom. Like, it's not extraordinary really in any degree. And there are many episodes that are just kind of shitty. It's just kind of, it's not always a great show. It's not always a good show. But Mark Linn-Baker and Bronson Pinchot always have fantastic chemistry, and they always get the absolute most you could possibly get out of their material, even in episodes that are really poorly written, that are just nothing but cliches and easy, dumb jokes and recycled plots and just goofy stuff. They get as much out of it as I think any performers could. And they have great chemistry together. They're a fantastic comic team. And they are always a joy to watch together, even in a really shitty episode. They are just an absolute joy to watch. My favorite episode is what was the title of it? I can't remember the title. I'll have to Google it. Perfect Strangers Bibi Bobka episode. Just Desserts. How could I fucking forget that? Yeah, Just Desserts is my favorite episode. It's the one where It's the one where Larry tastes this delicious Myposian dessert that Balky makes, and he decides that they're going to mass produce it and sell it to a hotel and make a whole bunch of money. And of course, it all goes completely wrong. It all goes haywire, and it ends up literally blowing up in all their faces. Right? It's a really funny episode. Lots of slapstick, lots of goofy sight gags, lots of wordplay, and it's a really good episode. Also, I can't. I think it's called Pipe Dreams is another great one where they're remodeling the bathroom of Marianne and Jennifer, the girls who live in the apartment upstairs that are their love interests, and that's another episode where Larry has bitten off more than he can chew, and he ends up suffering for it, and so does Balky, and so do their other friends, and that's sort of the real the old reliable plot of Perfect Strangers is Larry comes up with a scheme, gets way too ambitious, bites off more than he can chew, and ends up, suffering for it and being humiliated for it, and usually pulls Balky down with him. And that's like a classic Perfect Strangers plot structure. And Larry's my favorite. I mean, Balky is great. Bronson Pinchot does the best work of his career. And if you've seen some of his other work, that's not really saying much, but I do enjoy Bronson Pinchot as a performer, especially in Perfect Strangers. But Marklin Baker as Larry is, I love his character. I love Larry's character. He is a great comic character because he's that guy who refuses to accept his limitations, who constantly bites off more than he can chew, who never learns, who always comes back again with another scheme, who never seems to be humbled, at least not for longer than the end of the episode. He always comes back and he thinks he can take on the world, and this is the scheme that's going to work, and this is the thing that's going to make him rich or get him the girl or get him the promotion that he wants or get him the higher social status or whatever he has set his sights upon. He's sure he can do it, and this is the scheme that'll do it. This is the scheme that'll get him there. And he never learns, and he never, I love him. He's hilarious. And Marklin Baker plays him perfectly, plays his cockiness, his lack of self-awareness, his delusion, and then his reaction to being humbled and being humiliated temporarily. So it's still one of my favorite shows, even though I now see its flaws much more, clearly than I ever did when I was a kid. I still love it. It's still one of my favorite shows ever. Relic 5000 says, "Good evening, Master Shives. So it's election time here in Canada. I've already voted. I find myself hoping and praying to whatever gods will hear me that the Conservatives stay out of power. They're in control of at least 2 provinces, and those provinces have fared the worst COVID-wise. They also want to repeal the ban on assault rifles and seem to be working to mess with settled law regarding abortion. This election is a little scarier than most. Canada has 5 parties at the federal level: the Liberal Party of Canada, Conservative Party of Canada, NDP, Bloc Québécois, and Green Party of Canada. The Liberals have been in power for the last 7 or 8 years, but the Conservatives are polling well. How do you deal with the stress of a contested election? We haven't had one in a while. The last 2 were easy Liberal victories." Well, first of all, my condolences that we have apparently exported some of our shithead conservatives north of the border. I'm very sorry that you are having to face the prospect of a repeal on assault rifle bans and threats to abortion rights and other things. I hate the fact that Canada has to deal with that. I know Canada is not a utopia and has plenty of problems of its own. But it pains me to know that conservatives could begin to ruin Canada the way they have ruined the United States. And I hope that doesn't happen. How do you deal with the stress of a contested election? Oh my God. It's, the same way you deal with the inescapable fact that one day you are going to die. You just find other shit to think about for a while. or you get involved. You get involved. You get involved with a political campaign for a party that you support or a cause that you support, and you do what you can as an individual or as a member of a group or whatever you have available to you to try and make the vote come out the right way, or speak out, write a blog entry, make a video, tweet about it, or just get really drunk. I mean, there are positive, proactive ways to deal with it, and there are negative, self-destructive ways to deal with it. And I don't know what to tell you to do, but it sucks. It sucks. The stress of the last couple presidential elections here in the United States and also the midterms that followed, when it was, oh boy, are the Democrats going to fuck this up? They're probably going to fuck this up. How bad are they going to fuck it up? I would not wish it on anybody. And okay, it's not the worst thing in the world. There are worse experiences you can have than having to sit through a nail biter of an election, but it sucks because the stakes are higher than, your baseball team losing the World Series. It's like, oh, this will affect people's lives. If conservatives take power or take more power or whatever the stakes are, like, this will affect people's lives. This will affect the future direction of our society as a whole in a very negative way. There are high stakes here. So it's not just a nail biter because you've chosen a side and you want your team to win, which is the way a lot of, especially conservatives, seem, they try to paint it as like, oh, it's just arbitrary partisanship. And it's not. It's people who are seriously concerned about the future of their country and the world, because they know if one side wins, it's going to be a hell of a lot worse than if the other side wins. So, I mean, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I'm sorry that Canadians have to deal with it and have to face it. But hopefully, your fellow Canadian voters will get out and will do what they need to do, and it'll come out the right way. I really hope so. I really hope so. Because it sucks. It sucks. And finally, last question from Eric Allen, who says, all right, Steve, are you happy now that you got that damn song stuck in my head from Star Trek Enterprise? Ugh, God, my life is over. Thanks. Anyway, I hope you're well, Steve. Thank you, Eric. The ruler of Allentown, ladies and gentlemen. The ruler of Allentown. Ladies and gentlemen and my non-binary friends, I should say. I don't want to enforce a gender binary in my salutation. But yeah. I have no regrets. I think I did a fair job singing that song. I mean, I am by no means a crooner. I am an untrained singer and not a terribly good one, but I can kind of sort of carry a tune if it's the right tune and if I'm in a good enough voice. I think I did okay with the Enterprise theme song. I did, thinking back on it now, I did better with the Enterprise theme song than I did with the Perfect Strangers theme song, which is a great source of shame for me because I vastly prefer Perfect Strangers as a TV show to Star Trek Enterprise. But Eric, my friend, I am sorry for the pain I have caused you. I truly am. And now, that is the end of the patron and member questions. So let's turn instead, for the remainder of the stream, to the live chat. And by the way, thanks to everybody who is a channel member or a patron. I will tell you how you can become one of those if you are not already at the end of the stream. But I could not do this without you. So thank you for being patrons and members, and thanks for the questions. I really appreciate it. And now let's turn to the live chat and see what everybody is talking about here. So here we go. Dana says I'm a terrible liar. She always says that. Oh yeah, you know what? I'm not that sorry. I mean, look, Eric's great. I like Eric. But yeah, I'm not like all that sorry. Like, I mean, it's not going to keep me up at night thinking that I ruined something for Eric by singing the objectively not all that great theme song of Star Trek Enterprise. Anyway, yes, I admitted it. You dragged it out of me. Yes, and see, yeah, all you slackers, Kemp is a patron and a member, so let's just follow Kemp's example. Anyway, Let's see here. Derogatory Trekkie says, I stumbled upon two very interesting books. One, The Night of the Living Trekkies. Two, the collection of all the Trek spec scripts that never were. Did you read one of those books? No, but that spec script collection sounds interesting. I might have to look for that. I haven't read either one of those. Knit and Crochet Tiger says, on Star Trek Voyager, I often thought that the Okampa only living 9 years was a dumb idea for an alien race, and them being sexually mature at 2 years was a metaphor for pedophiles. It's disgusting. Yeah, I don't know if that was consciously the point, but there was a lot of that going around. Like, that was a common trope, and it does remind me a little bit of that, like I said in my answer to that question. Well, yeah, she's young, but up here she's old enough, like that kind of thing. It's just, when you think about it too much, it brings up a lot of creepy shit, Oh, Deralta Trekkie. Oh, bless your heart. Okay, I think we established that I don't know anything about wrestling, but I heard about the finger poke of doom. Did you hear about that? What did you think about it? Okay, everybody, strap in. I'm going to tell you a wrestling story. I'll try to be quick because I know everybody else has questions too, and not everybody's here for the wrestling stuff, which I completely understand. Not only did I hear about it, I watched it as it happened. The finger poke of doom is what happened when in WCW in January of 1999. And John, I see your super chat. I will get to it in just a minute after I finish answering Duranta Trekkie's question. So what had happened was Kevin Nash had just won the WCW World Title from Goldberg, who was an undefeated champion, and he defended the title against Nash in the main event of Starrcade, which was WCW's big pay-per-view of the year. And Kevin Nash beat Goldberg for the title, and then they were building up on Nitro, which was WCW's weekly TV show. They were building up to a big match between Nash defending the title against Hulk Hogan, who had just come back, and Nash was kind of a babyface and Hogan was kind of a heel, but they were, their allegiances had been kind of shaky. And they build the whole show up there. Go, Nash is going to defend the world title against Hulk Hogan. And, these two rivals for leadership of the NWO are going to collide. The NWO was a group that they were both a member of, right? So they get in the ring for the match. The referee rings the bell. They're getting set to lock up. And Hogan draws back his fist like he's going to punch Nash right in the mouth. And then he brings the fist in and he stops and he pokes Nash right in the chest. And Nash takes a bump. He just falls flat on his back as though the finger was like the touch of death from Batman, the animated series. And just, he just knocked him flat on his ass. And Hogan covers him. 1, 2, 3. Hogan wins the match. Hogan wins the title. It was all a setup. Hogan and Nash were in cahoots. It was all a plan to get the belt back onto Hogan so Hogan could take back over as the leader of the NWO. It was a really dumb idea. It was a really terrible angle. It felt like a screw you to the fans. It did not lead to anything that anybody watching the show at the time really wanted to see. And there are a lot of people who mark the finger poke of doom as the point of no return that eventually led to WCW going out of business and being bought for pennies on the dollar by Vince McMahon. So it was, long story short, it was an infamously bad wrestling angle that pretty much everybody hated at the time and everybody still hates, and it deserves the terrible reputation that it has because it sucked. It was the shits, as they say in wrestling. Daryl Lett says, okay, Steve, are you a cat or a dog person? I'm a cat person myself, lower maintenance. I always used to say I was a dog person until I had a cat. Now it's hard to pick. I guess I would say if I had to choose, I would be more of a cat person now for similar reasons because, yeah, lower maintenance because, a cat will mostly take care of itself. Like you give a cat its basic needs, give it food, give it water, give it a place to go to the bathroom, and a cat can just take care of itself. And it will come and find you if it wants some snuggles and some love and companionship, right? Other than that, cat can go and do what the cat does, right? So I'm more of a cat person now. But God, I love dogs. Um, if I were not so uh, enamored of living by myself, I would probably want to get a dog. I don't want to get a dog right now. I don't know if I'll ever want to get a dog because I really like living by myself. Like even without a pet, like I just like having the entire house to myself. But if I were going to get a pet at this point, it would probably be a dog. Because I haven't. I mean, I haven't had a dog for a long time. But if I don't know. I feel like I might be more of a cat person now. Some random geek says, "What are your thoughts on chiropractic?" I think it's bullshit. Actually, there's a chiropractic office near where I live in a strip mall, and it's called Chiropractic Solutions. And I was driving past it the other day, and I saw the sign. I guess it was the first time I had noticed it, and I said, "Oh, Chiropractic Solutions." And I thought, if chiropractic is the solution, is the problem having too much money? Because that's like the only problem that chiropractic can solve. It's like, oh, what am I going to do with all this money? I know, I'll go see my chiropractor. Since I don't feel like, digging a hole and throwing the money in there or dousing it in gasoline and lighting it the fuck on fire, I guess I'll go to the chiropractor. 255 AD says, should child vaccination be mandatory? It should, in the sense that that vaccines are already mandatory for children who want to go to public school. Like, I don't think it should be mandatory as in people come to your house and force you to get vaccinated, but I think it should be mandatory in order for you to do certain things that most people, either have to do or want to do, like send their kids to school, to a public school, right? I think you should have to get vaccinated. Yeah, absolutely. Um, And I also think that choosing not to get your child vaccinated, if you make it a point to not get your child vaccinated, and then your child catches a disease that could have been prevented by the vaccine, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I don't know what the if it would be plausible to make that a crime. But I mean, if you could figure out a way to do it where it would be just and fair, like, I would be completely in favor of that too. Like, there is no excuse to not get vaccinated or not get your kids vaccinated unless there is a specific medical issue that makes it unsafe. Like, barring some kind of medical issue, there is no excuse not to get yourself vaccinated and to get your child vaccinated. I know there's not a child-safe COVID vaccine yet, but generally speaking, just for vaccine, yeah, there is no excuse. I have no sympathy whatsoever for anti-vax parents, whatsoever. Go back through. And John, I forgot about your super chat. So let me throw that in here. John Burns with the super chat says, the Transformers movie with the quoting of Romeo and Juliet law scene was rather creepy. He was 20, she was 17. Why do you have that law in your pocket? I don't remember that. 20 and 17 isn't as bad as Buffy and Angel, but it's still kind of on the edge there. Let's see. Let me see. Actually, 20 and 17, according to the half your age plus 7 rule, 20 and 17 is right. Like, 17 is the youngest person that a 20-year-old should be able to date, according to the half your age plus 7 rule, because half of 20 is 10 plus 7 is 17. So a 20-year-old dating a 17-year-old is like, oh, is right there on the bubble. And here is a highlighted comment from Garak 2011, who has been a channel member for 5 months. Says, hey, Steve, I would gladly take Quantum Leap Genesis parts 1 and 2 over TNG Code of Honor. And again, I love TNG as a whole. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have the same problems that Code of Honor has, does it? I think I would be with you there. Yeah, the pilot episode of Quantum Leap is a bad episode, but it's not like a racist episode that I remember anyway. So it's got that going for it. Couple more super chat from John Burns says, in your How Much of a Creeper is Neelix video, remember the lesson learned from Mary Kay Letourneau going to prison in 1997. It seems fun until ew. Yeah. Yeah, and also remember that the gender really shouldn't make that much of a difference. Like it shouldn't if a male teacher had sex with like a 14-year-old female student, pretty much everybody would be like, "Oh, fuck, that's not cool." But if a female teacher has sex with a 14-year-old boy, there's a certain segment of the population that would want to high five the boy, be like, "Yeah, good job, man." No, it's still sexual assault. It's still statutory rape. We shouldn't be in favor of that either. Um, Here's another super chat from Garak 2011. It says, "Steve, are you a fan of Buffy and Angel the shows?" Yes, oh, absolutely. Um, I am a big fan of Buffy and Angel. I think they're both terrific shows. I especially Angel. Like I like Buffy a lot. I'm a big fan of Buffy. I watched it at the time. I didn't watch it from the beginning. Actually, I think Dana is who got me into Buffy originally. Um, but yeah, Buffy and Angel are terrific shows. Terrific shows. I'm a huge fan of both. And now, I mean, obviously, as we've been talking about, like the age difference between Buffy and Angel, there are issues beyond that as well. Like the shows have their problems. They're not perfect shows, either dramatically or in terms of like their, politics or the sort of sociological implications of their stories. But yeah, they were both terrific shows. Um, Radical Bacon says, "Is the finger poke of doom a jump the shark moment?" I mean, that's tough because WCW had so many jump the shark moments. It was, I think, if you say, was it a jump the shark moment? It definitely was. I don't know if it was the jump the shark moment because WCW was such a shit show creatively for so long. WCW had so many incredibly talented people on its roster, and they were booked by a series of people who had no idea what to do with them and no idea how to tell stories with them. It's really especially frustrating to look back on now, to like go back and watch like old episodes of Nitro and Thunder and WCW Saturday Night, and back starting around 95, 96 when Nitro started. And you just watch some of those old shows and go, Jesus Christ, what the fuck were they doing? Like the creative makes no sense at all. It's terrible. um Oh, Dana says, "Will you sing happy birthday to Empress Meg?" Oh, Empress Meg, is it your birthday? Of course I'll sing happy birthday to Empress Meg. Of course I will. Um, Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Empress Meg. Happy birthday to you and many more. I hope that was acceptable. And thank you, Dana, for bringing that to my attention. Um, Kemp Chalmers asks, "Did I watch Collision in Korea?" I don't think I've ever actually seen the whole show. I've seen different matches from it, but I don't think I've actually watched the entire show. And it's one of those that hasn't been widely available. It wasn't ever, I don't think it was on the WWE network when I subscribed to that. And I don't think it's on Peacock now either. It might have, was it on New Japan World? I can't remember. I haven't subscribed to New Japan World for a while, but I don't think I've ever watched the whole show. Or it was two shows. There was two nights, and then, but I think they edited it together into one pay-per-view. But I don't think I've ever seen it. Um, oh, you're welcome, Meg. I'm glad you liked it. Um, yeah, Radical Bacon. Yes, I promise I will not become a shithead while you are gone in coding boot camp. And good luck, and we will miss you. As I told you in the chat before we went on the air. Um, we will definitely miss you around here, and best of luck. Best of luck. 255 AD says the condom thing isn't the difference that you can just avoid sex with HIV positive people, whereas you can't really avoid people passing people who might have COVID in public. Oh yeah, the difference in transmissibility is, I think that's relevant. Sure, I agree. Yeah, HIV is not airborne. You can't just catch it by standing next to someone, whereas you can catch COVID that way. So I do think that is a relevant difference. Tasby12 mentioned Vern Gagne, some love for Vern Gagne. If you've heard of him, have I heard of him? What kind of a wrestling? Have I heard of Vern Gagne? Yes, I've heard of Vern Gagne. And actually, if anybody doesn't know who Vern Gagne is, and you are a wrestling fan, and especially if you're like an old school wrestling fan, I'm talking like old school. The Wrestling from Chicago has a YouTube channel where they have posted matches that were originally shown on the Dumont network in the 1950s of Wrestling from Chicago. And there is a match on there from 1952 or 53, I think it is, around that area, around that time. Vern Gagne versus Lou Thez. Now, you talk about a classic pro wrestling dream match. Vern Gagne versus Lou Thez. And Lou Thez was the NWA world champion at the time. Vern Gagne may have been the United States champion at the time. I can't remember if he was or not, but there were a couple of NWA promoters who gave Vern a version of the U.S. title to carry around because the NWA wouldn't make him the world champion. And then eventually that's why Vern left the NWA and started his own territory, the AWA, and made himself the world champion of that. But yeah, Vern was a great wrestler. Vern's style might be a little too slow or a little too based on grappling for fans of today's style wrestling. But I love watching a Vern Gagne match. I think Vern Gagne and Billy Robinson, Vern Gagne and Nick Bockwinkel had some fantastic matches in the 70s. And a lot of those are you can find footage of those on the internet, and I think some of it is in the WWE section of Peacock if you look at the old AWA stuff, and certainly from the late 70s and the 80s when Vern was kind of doing his retirement run. Even at the advanced age that he was when he did his retirement run, I think he was in his 50s. He could still go. I mean, he wasn't like fantastic at that point, but he was good. He was solid. And Vern was a great wrestler. Vern was a fantastic and a great trainer. My God, you think of the list of wrestlers that Vern Gagne trained or discovered. It's very impressive. Very impressive. Let me see. CMAX says, yes, but also that vaccine mandates encompass everyone. Condom mandates for HIV positive folks target a group. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Dana asks, the lack of self-awareness, the schemes, the grandiosity. Is Ensign Johnson inspired by Cousin Larry? Not consciously, but now that I think about it, probably. I mean, I'm sure that was a formative influence on me because again, Perfect Strangers was my first favorite show. Like I watched that show from a very young age, and it would be silly not to think it didn't have. It would be silly not to think that it had a very strong influence on my sense of humor. And I think the fact that I am drawn to characters like that, maybe that does have something to do with my affinity for Larry. I don't think I've ever played or written for myself a Larry exactly. None of the characters I've played in any of my videos, in the Stuffy videos, in the Ask a Professional YouTuber videos, or on the podcast as Ensign Johnson. I don't think any of those is a Larry type exactly, but you're right. They do have that lack of self-awareness, that just delusionally big ego, and that's impenetrable, that nothing gets through it. Or if something does get through it, it doesn't stay for very long. Like there's maybe a fleeting moment of self-awareness, and then it's right back to being the pompous windbag again. That is very Larry. Is very Larry. So yeah, that wasn't a conscious decision, but I think it would be silly to deny that there was some influence there for sure. Radical Bacon, no, I do not have a TikTok. I have TikTok installed on my phone. When I got my new phone about a couple of months ago now, it came with TikTok installed on it. But I've never used it. I don't know what I would make a TikTok about. I've thought about it. I've toyed with it. I'm not anti-TikTok. I just wonder what I would make videos about. I watch TikToks from other people, and some of them are so creative, and I just wonder, like, what the fuck would I even do? But so no, I don't. John Burns says, another super chat. Thank you once again, John, for the super chat. Says, a little explanation for the yay capitalism. When corporations do something right, COVID mandates, masks, vaccinations, I cheer as yay corp equals yay cap. Yeah, or maybe, just maybe yay people doing the right thing. I think part of it is, part of the danger is when you congratulate a corporation for doing something right, for doing something good, but you don't want that recognition of them doing a good thing to be seen as letting them off the hook for the bad things they do or for the abuses that are part of the overall system. You know what I mean? And I think that's sort of the concern, you know. Um, yeah, Geek, I think you should totally make TikTok videos. Um, Empress Meg says, my first favorite movie was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I had it on VHS and watched it over and over and over for years. Of course, since I was a kid, all the innuendo flew completely over my head. I was trying to think earlier because I remember Perfect Strangers was my first favorite show. My first favorite song was Don't Dream It's Over by Crowded House. And that's still one of my favorite songs to this day. I don't really remember what my first favorite movie was. Maybe An American Tail. I remember going to see An American Tail in theaters. So I would have been maybe 5 when the original American Tail came out. So I guess that was, and I loved it. I loved it. Um, so that was probably my first favorite movie. I don't remember what my first favorite book was. But those are my first favorites that I can remember. Geraldo Trekkie says, sorry I have to bring up the Snyder Cut again. About the creepy-eyed Norwegian women choir singing the Aquaman song. I find that more uncomfortable than Barry landing on Diana. Well, it's just weird. It's just like there are things. There's something about one of the things about the Snyder Cut that makes it so shitty is that there are moments like that where the whole movie just stops dead because Zack Snyder got this idea for this really cool thing that he wanted to show you. And it's always something like that, where it's like a choir of women singing a song while Aquaman returns to the sea. And it's like, we don't have all fucking day. Like, let's get on with it. This is why this fucking thing is 4 hours long. All right, because every 5 minutes you're stopping the story dead in its tracks to let us see some other dumb fucking thing that has nothing to do with nothing that you thought was cool, and you threw it in because you have no fucking discipline, right? Yeah, that there's stuff like that all through the Snyder Cut. That's one of the reasons why it's such a shitty movie and why it's so baffling to me that anybody would defend it. Like, I know that the theatrical cut is not good. Like, it's not a good movie. But it's so much better than the Snyder Cut. Like, it's not even, I don't even have to think about it. It's not even close. The Snyder Cut is awful. It's barely even a movie. Oh, Land Before Time, Some Random Geek. Yes. Oh God, I love The Land Before Time. Yeah, that was after An American Tail, but oh boy, I love The Land Before Time for sure. And Kemp thrown in there with, yeah, Land Before Time, baby. Dana, will I sing Don't Dream It's Over? Eventually I'm going to get DMCA'd here if I keep singing all these songs. I would sing it for you privately. I won't sing it for the stream. I don't have clearance for this shit. I don't have clearance to sing all these songs. Somebody from Crowded House is who is the lead singer from Crowded House? What was his fucking name? Finn something. Crowded House. Neil Finn, that's it, Neil Finn. So not Finn something Finn, but Neil Finn is going to see this, or somebody is going to send it to him, and they're going to be like, "Hey, some motherfucker in America is singing your song and didn't have the rights to it." So I'm not gonna sing it on the stream. Dana will give me alternate lyrics and I can sing. Sure, I'll Weird Al it. I'll sing a satirized version of Don't Dream It's Over. You write alternate lyrics to Don't Dream It's Over that I can sing to the same tune, and we'll call it satire and try to skate by on that. How about that? We'll do it that way. See, Mac, I didn't say I would get content ID'd. I don't think I would get like automatically content ID'd. But what if some record executive, or what if Neil Finn, is just bored one night and he's like, well, let me check out this random dipshit on YouTube. Holy shit, he's singing my song. I don't want to risk it. I don't want to risk it. Derogatory says, I watched a review of Buffy season 1 where Cordy, trying to assess if Buffy is with the cool kids, asking about James Spader, and I was like, Reddington, that hot back in the day. Yeah, back in his prime, James Spader was quite a looker. Yeah, James Spader was quite a looker. Kemp Chalmers, I did not know there were 14 Land Before Times. I knew they made a whole bunch of direct-to-video sequels, but I did not realize there were 14 of them. Holy shit. They just kept going, huh? They just said, fuck, we're going to keep cranking these up. People love these cartoon dinosaurs. Children love cartoon dinosaurs that make them sad. Let's just crank them out. Radical Bacon, something tells me my big break, making me a music star, will not be singing a 35-year-old Crowded House song a cappella. Dorota Trekkie, I have not watched A Head Full of Honey. Best German movie I've seen. Oh man. I mean, ever, it's probably Murnau's original Nosferatu. But of more recent vintage, I really liked, would Wings of Desire count as a German movie? I know Wim Wenders and Bruno Ganz are German. Wings of Desire was great. I think Run Lola Run was German, wasn't it? That was great. What else? What's one? Oh, The Lives of Others. Holy shit, The Lives of Others is a great movie. Oh my god. Yeah, some random geek. Metropolis. Yeah, Metropolis was German. Yeah, Metropolis was Fritz Lang, that was the director. Yeah, Metropolis is great. Mike Hall says, what as yet unexplored time period in the Star Trek chronology do you think would be most interesting to set a new series in? As yet unexplored. I mean, now that Discovery has jumped ahead to the 32nd century, there's a whole vast space between, the end of Voyager and the time period where Discovery is now set. That there's all kinds of space you could play with there. I would be interested if somebody could come up with a good story. I would be interested in something set during the period, maybe the era before Star Trek Enterprise, sort of after First Contact, before Enterprise, because I like astronaut stuff, and I like moments when Star Trek draws lines between its characters and astronauts doing astronaut stuff. And I feel like that would be a good time period, because by the time you get to, Enterprise was a lot more astronaut-y than Star Trek shows that are set later in the timeline, but it's still, it's Star Trek, and the ship looks a little more functional, and the ship is smaller and has kind of a submarine feel to it. I love the set design on Enterprise. It's my favorite part of the show. But it's, they're mostly doing Star Trek stuff, and it looks and feels mostly like other Star Trek shows. But I would love a Star Trek show set early enough in the timeline, so maybe like a generation before the era of Enterprise, where they're still astronauts, and then, the Vulcans are there, and there's some Star Trek shit happening. We know about other kinds of aliens and stuff, but the human spaceflight program doesn't really take them that far out of their own solar system, and there's other stuff going on, and it's mostly Earth based or Earth solar system based. or at least in our general neighborhood. And the space flight stuff feels like astronaut stuff, more advanced than our astronaut stuff, but like astronaut stuff. I think that would be interesting. Again, assuming there was a story attached to it, right? There needs to be a story, but just as a premise and as an era, yeah, maybe something like that. Maybe something pre-Enterprise would be interesting. Kirak 2011 with another super chat. Thank you very much. Says, sorry I kept this short, but as always, a pleasure to see you. Look forward to seeing you next time. Well, thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate you stopping by and I appreciate your generosity. Kemp Chalmers with a super chat says, what's the most disturbing movie you've ever seen? The movie that affected me the most emotionally, like in terms of upsetting me or disturbing me, was Dancer in the Dark. The ending of that movie left me with a rock in the pit of my stomach. Like, it was devastating. But in terms of, I don't know if that's exactly what you're getting at or not, but I mean, it was absolutely devastating. So it was disturbing in that sense. Actually, I would have to say also, the first time I watched it in the movie theater at age like 19, the Blair Witch Project was pretty disturbing. Like, the Blair Witch Project left me kind of feeling a little unsteady. Like, it really got me. It really worked on me. It was the first time I watched it. It was really, it got me. I thought it was scary. It got me on like a visceral level. The times I've watched it since, it doesn't do that. The times I've watched it since, I'm kind of like, I still like it. I still think I do genuinely think the first Blair Witch is a good movie. But now I know where it's going and I know what the tricks are, and I can kind of separate myself from it and kind of take a step away from it and still enjoy it, but not get that involved in it like I did the first time. But the first time I watched it, man, oh boy, it got me. Super chat from John Burns says, checked out True Believer. RDJ plays a young lawyer from 1989 who moves to New York because he's inspired by a cynical former idealistic lawyer. No, I've never seen that. But thank you for the recommendation. I have not seen that. 255 AD says, what Geek said, maybe life under modern capitalism is better than life under feudalism, but which would you rather be, a factory worker in 1866 or a peasant farmer in 1166? Oh my God. That's tough. I mean, I don't know if I'd want to be a factory worker under any circumstances, but I don't know if I'd want to be a farmer either. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. I have to do this. Holy shit. Okay. Dana has sent me lyrics. Oh my God. Okay. Everybody, you're in for a treat. Maybe. Dana has sent me lyrics that she apparently has written just now. To Don't Dream It's Over. It has been rewritten as a song about the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. And Dana, in all modesty, your modesty is one of your most charming qualities, as you know. But it is so good. It is so good. Okay. So well, I don't know. 255 AD's question. I don't know. I'd rather be a feudal farmer. Okay, there you go. I'd rather be a feudal farmer. Anyway, okay. I'm gonna sing Dana's song. So, to the tune of "Don't Dream It's Over," here's this song that Dana has written about the Snyder Cut. Oh my God. Let me make sure I've got this now. Okay. There is darkness within, there is darkness without, and some swoopy camera movements. There's a battle ahead, many people are dead, but I'll never see the end while I'm stuck in this seat. Hey now, this film's not over. Hey now, everybody's wangsty. Snyder just wants to tell a fascist story. Who let him do this shit? Second verse. I'm massaging my scalp. This shit doesn't make sense. Sitting through this is making my head ache intense. I am stuck here today, suffering through these cliches. I check the time left and sigh in dismay. Hey now, this film's not over. Hey now, everybody's wangsty. Snyder just wants to tell a fascist story. Who let him do this shit? There you have it. The Snyder Cut parody, Snyder Cut themed parody of Don't Dream It's Over, written on the spot by our very own Dana Cole. That is fantastic. That is fantastic. I wish I could have sung that better. That is fantastic. Super chat from John Burns. Truth or truth? Would you rather be El Hunko as the best hunter in your group in one of the last hunter-gatherer tribes in Europe, or the first farmer? I'd rather be a farmer. I'd rather be a farmer than a hunter-gatherer. That's not even like I don't even have to think about that. I would much rather be a farmer than a hunter-gatherer. And Dana, I almost cracked up a little bit, as you probably saw. I almost cracked up a little bit, but man, that was actually really good. That was really good. And yes, Imtrex 521. That is an advantage of living alone. No one cares if I sing. I can sing whatever I want, as long and as loud and as terribly as I want. Ain't nobody gonna say shit about it. Thank you, Empress Meg. But the credit has to go to Dana for coming out with those lyrics like in 5 minutes. Like, Jesus Christ. That was impressive. Just that the act of writing that so quickly and having it come out so great was very impressive. 255 AD, do you remember like a month ago when I suggested doing a pre-enterprise show exactly like the one you described? No, but maybe that's where I got it from. Maybe that's where I got it from. If so, there you go. Thank you for the suggestion. Muad Mouse, a dog would have provided accompaniment. Yeah, probably. Drone to Trekkie says, I heard the She-Hulk show will be more of a horror-themed thing. Why? Original She-Hulk was fun. Why can't they make that? The tall green Amazon being smart, witty, and funny. Well, maybe that'll be a part of it, too. I mean, we haven't even seen the show yet. Maybe it'll be a horror-themed show, but it'll also have a sense of humor. I mean, I kind of hope so, but I don't know. And Dorota Trekkie also says, imagine having the following candidates: a dude laughing at a catastrophe, another dude who was involved in some tax-related schemes, and a woman who copied some text. Whom do you vote? I mean, if the worst thing she did was copy some text, then I would vote for the woman who plagiarized stuff, if that's the worst thing she did. Some random geek, you should dance if you want to and leave your friends behind. Because if your friends don't dance, and if they don't dance, then they're no friends of mine, or apparently of mine. Yes, Empress Meg, we should do an album. Dana should write parody lyrics to all of my favorite songs, and I can belt them out. Mr. System 96, would you like to see an Enterprise B or C crew? Potentially. Yeah, I mean, again, if the story was there, potentially. I would be more interested in the Enterprise B because the Enterprise B is closer to the TOS movie era, and that has always been the era that, I mean, obviously I love those movies, but there's never been a TV series set during the classic Trek movie era. And the Enterprise B would be like right on the tail end of that. You know what I mean? So it would still, you could still have the same style uniforms. It would still be more or less in the same sort of, the some years after the end of Star Trek 6, let's put it that way. Um, but I would like that because mostly because those are my favorite uniforms. I love the red tunic with the clasps and the belt. You know what I mean? I love those. Those are my favorite Star Trek uniforms. So I love the aesthetic of the ships. Like I love the sets of the Enterprise in the classic Trek movies. So I mean, that's for those reasons. I would be naturally more interested in an Enterprise B show than an Enterprise C show. But just let me remodel the bridge on the Enterprise B so it looks a little bit more like the bridge of the Enterprise A. Not exactly the same, obviously, but get rid of the touchscreen stuff and give them some functional buttons. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then I'm there for that. Super chat from Kemp Chalmers. Please sing Ave Maria. Are you trying to kill me? Ave Maria. That's all I know. So I've sung Ave Maria. Thank you very much. 255 AD asks, do you think the Chuds will say She-Hulk looks like a man because she'll have muscles? I have absolutely no doubt. I have absolutely no doubt that somebody will complain about that. Yes. Geraldo Trekkie, I have not watched Batwoman. I have had that sort of mentally in my to-watch list. Maybe I should go ahead and add it to my to-watch list on HBO Max because I see it's on HBO Max now. I've not watched it, but it looks really interesting. And it's gotten decent reviews. So I will have to go back and catch up with that sometime. Right now, I'm working my way through the DC original animated movie universe. And I'm almost to the end of that. I just watched the Death of Superman today, and I'm trying to watch them in order. So today I watched the Death of Superman. The next one I watch is the Constantine movie, and then after that is the Reign of the Supermen, and then Batman Hush, which I've already watched, but I might watch it again just to refresh my memory. And then I think there's a Wonder Woman movie, and then there's a last Justice League movie, and then that's it. But I want to do a video about that series, so I'm sort of plowing through those at the moment. But yeah, maybe after that I can check out Batwoman. Dana, did Tom Lehrer put his songs in the public domain? I have no idea. I'll check it out. If Tom Lehrer's songs are in the public domain, I would love to sing some Tom. I love Tom Lehrer songs, as you know. I don't know if I love them as much as you do, but I love Tom Lehrer. So I would totally sing some Tom Lehrer for you. Well, a lot of people are saying he did. I will check that out maybe next time. I'm going to wrap up the show here in a minute, but maybe next time I can sing some Tom Lehrer if indeed his songs are in the public domain, and I can sing them without fear of reprisal or retribution. Yes, I would love to sing some Tom Lehrer. We could duet. We could duet next time we're doing a live stream together. We can both sing Tom Lehrer. Yeah, you're Empress Meg. I could go. Yeah, I could go for lots of public domain songs. I could go. Actually, I did in the Stuffy videos. I would occasionally sing, usually in character, but one of the ones I did, I did a storyline in the Stuffy videos a few years ago where Stuffy moved out, and of course it turned out to be temporary. He came back eventually. He went away so he could come back. Yeah. And for our last Christmas together with everybody in the house together, we sang the song Toyland, which is a public domain song. And I thought that was appropriate with a show with a cast full of stuffed toys. So we all sang Toyland together. And that was nice. I thought that came out well. Um, Radical Bacon Stuffy will probably not be starting while you are away. No. Um, and yes, Stephen G. Klinar, thank you for yes. Please don't ask me to dance. Um, Dorota Trekkie says again, Quantum Leap. The last episode's cliffhanger isn't that great. What is your least favorite cliffhanger of a TV show? Least favorite cliffhanger. I don't know. I can't think of anything. I'm sure there have been lots of shitty cliffhangers, but I can't think of anything. I mean, I don't know. It's probably like a Voyager episode. It's probably like you get to the end and it's a cliffhanger, and I'm thinking like, oh, am I really supposed to care enough to come back next week for this shit? Probably something like that, but I don't know. Um, yeah, Radical Bacon. I'm thinking because the writing for the new season of Stuffy and Friends, or the new series, I should say, is at a point where I don't think it's going to be. I don't think we're going to have new episodes this year. But I'm thinking I might do a Thanksgiving riff video because those can kind of be off on their own and be their own thing. So I might do a Steve and Stuffy, or Stuffy and Friends Thanksgiving riff video this year because I didn't do one last year. So it would be me and Stuffy and probably Jack would be the three that would be the main riffers. So I might do that. I haven't decided completely, but 100%. But I think I might do a Turkey Day video this year with Stuffy. So hopefully people will be looking forward to that and would like that if that's something I do. Anyway, 255 AD has demanded that I leave. We have reached the end of the show. So I'm going to call the proceedings to a close. Thank you all so much for a really great stream and a really great evening. I hope you've had a good time. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for all the super chats. I really appreciate your generosity. Thanks to everybody who is a channel member or a patron. If you, oh yeah, Dana's saying, wait. And yeah, or Geek, I'm going to mention the charity links here in a minute. I just want to see what Dana has. Oh, just the charity link. Was it just the charity links? I wasn't going to forget the charity links. Don't forget the charity links. I'll just do the charity links right now. Don't forget the charity links that are linked in the description, charitylinks.page. Some friends of ours need a helping hand, need some assistance financially. And if you click on the link to go to charitylinks.page, it'll take you to a Google Doc that our friend Some Random Geek maintains that has PayPal links and crowdfunding sites and legal defense funds and other places that if you have a few extra bucks and you want to send it to a good cause, you can send it to help out some of our friends or some of those funds that need help and could use your help. So please consider doing that. Charitylinks.page. It is linked in the video description. If you enjoy what I do on this channel and you would like to help out and help me to continue to do this, you can do so by either becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives and making a monthly pledge of any amount, or becoming a channel member, which you can do by just clicking the join button down there on the YouTube page. And if you click the join button, you can select whatever tier of monthly support you want to offer. If you become a patron, you can choose your level of support as well. And pledges of any amount per month really help me out. So if you enjoy what I do here on YouTube, and you can, even if it's just $1 a month, that really helps me out. And I really, really appreciate it. And pledges of any amount, whether it's $1 a month, $5 a month, on up to whatever you can afford and whatever you think I'm worth. Memberships and being a patron at any amount lets you submit questions ahead of time for these Ask Away live streams, and also let you vote in the polls that determine upcoming Trek Actually video topics. So there are a couple of perks, and also you get the chance to hang out with me once a month in a Zoom call for an hour. We do those the last Sunday of every month. So, and those are always a lot of fun too. So there's some little extra perks if you become a member or a patron. Or both in the case of Kemp Chalmers and a few other people. But yeah, so if you like what I do and you can afford it, consider becoming a patron or a member. Also, don't forget that if you like the YouTube stuff, you should also be listening to my podcasts. I am a cast member on a couple of podcasts. First is Late Seating, the movie review podcast that I co-host along with the great Jason Harding, where we take a look at classic films, give them a fresh review, decide whether they deserve whatever reputation they have, be it good or bad. Our most recent episode is about Terminator 2. Our next episode, which we will be recording this weekend, will be about the Shawshank Redemption. So if you haven't been listening to Late Seating and you want to hear two guys crack each other up and make jokes about movies, and talk about movies and what happens in the movies, and then say what they think about the movies, listen to Late Seating. And the other podcast I'm a part of is the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I am on alongside Jason and also our very own Dana Cole. We play characters who are serving aboard the TNG era Enterprise. We are low-ranking officers who are kind of doing our own thing in the background of the actual Star Trek episodes. We're having so much fun with the show this year. We're into our 4th season and our 1st season with Dana as a regular cast member. And it's just going really well. Our new episode just went up today. So it's a great time to discover the Ensign's Log. If you have not been listening, the start of the 4th season, because we make a jump from classic Trek to TNG, the start of the 4th season is a really good jumping on point. So if you're intimidated by like, oh, they've been doing the show for 4 years, can I just jump in and enjoy it right away? Well, if you're worried about that, season 4, the beginning of season 4 is a really good jumping off point, and you can catch up to where we're at in season 4 pretty quick because we're several episodes in, but we're not like super far ahead of you. So, but anyway, check out the Ensign's Log, check out Late Seating. You can listen to them at the links in the description, or just go to lemmylistenpodcasts.com, and I hope you enjoy them. If you do. That is it, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Once again, thank you all for your generosity, for your patronage, for your membership, for your super chats. I couldn't do this without you. I hope you have a great night. I hope you have a good weekend. Radical Bacon, we're going to miss you. Hurry back. Have a great time at coding boot camp. I hope it's not too difficult. And we look forward to seeing you again when you have a chance to come back and be with us again. So thanks. And see you when I see you. And everybody else, have a good night. Have a good weekend. See you next time.